What's up guys, Lewi here, welcome back to the channel. Today I have on a very special guest and one of my good friends and brothers, George Bryant. Now George, as you'll find out in this interview, is a pretty incredible person. He's the creator of Relationships Beat Algorithms, he's the creator of the Mind of George podcast, and his big thing is client journey and how relationships should take precedent over everything else in your business if you really want it to scale. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time introing him here. We'll jump into the video right now, but I encourage you to watch the whole thing. It's packed full of goodness. So without further ado, here we go. All right, welcome back, guys. I am honored here. Oh, change of background there for my man.
I feel like we need a mood change.
I love it. Well, I'm honored to have a very important person in my life join us on the call today, Mr. George Bryant. How's it going, brother?
Dude, I'm stoked to be here. Now my child is happy that the color feels like I want the color to be.
I love it. If you guys don't know already, George is a master of client journey and a lot of things that you'll hear him online and look him up online. This is what you'll kind of find. He's an expert on these things. And you can check out his podcast, the Mind of George.
Yep, Mind of George show, mindofgeorge.com.
And everywhere else. I'll post all that in the show notes. And really kind of, I think a lot of the content that you and I kind of talk about off camera, I feel like is more important than the stuff sometimes that we talk about on camera. Because I talk about time management, productivity, all this stuff. You talk about client journey, you're expert marketer, all that good stuff. But, it's funny how you meet people in your life and instantly click. So maybe just kind of give us just a brief summary of where you came from to where you're at in terms of you're decorated in the military and you got to this place now where you're about to launch a whole nother platform for people coming in. So maybe give us a brief history and then we can
I'll give context. I'll give a short context for everybody because Louis and I would be here for the next 60 hours if we did the biography of George. But for the context, and I think it is important, like I joke with people that I'm only successful because I'm stupid, but I mean that with like all the love to myself. And it wasn't because I set out to be an entrepreneur. I set out to survive, right? So pretty tumultuous childhood, from abuse and sexual abuse and social services and homelessness and all that stuff to like just really choosing to survive, being bullied, the only white kid in my class, front teeth knocked out, nose broken. And I'm like, I'm going to do the only thing I can think of to survive. I'm going to forge my parents' signature and join the Marine Corps. But for me, that was it. I made it. Right. I wasn't going to end up wherever that was that I was afraid of, but I was called differently. And so then I spent 13 years of my life on active duty. And of course, Napoleon syndrome. I had to be the best at everything. So I was the best at being the best of everything and getting voluntold for the craziest of shit and then getting injured, the best of everybody. And even doing that better than everybody. But yeah, I almost lost my legs in 2005 from bilateral exercise-induced compartment syndrome, which is like a 1 in a billion chance. And then was told I'd never walk again, but I was more afraid of being homeless than I was walking again. So I learned how, even though they said they would amputate my legs, went back on full duty, ended up getting a couple concussions, traumatic brain injuries. And then I was at 12 years though. So I was like, I made it, right? I'm past the 10-year mark. I'm 8 years away from retirement. I was in E7, like in the zone for E7. So like only 2 ranks left. And then they're like, hey, you're kind of damaged goods. We're gonna kick you out. I actually had no ground to stand on. Except I was lucky that I accidentally started healing my body. And after experiencing death and a lot of Marine death and my family death and, healing all the childhood trauma, I didn't want to be sick anymore. And I was bulimic as an active duty Marine, right? 15 years of bulimia because of the sexual abuse. And so I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to cook. And I found CrossFit, which led me to paleo, which saved my life. But all I did was post recipes on Facebook that I had to make a fake college email for to even get one to hold myself accountable to cooking and eating the food so I wouldn't be bulimic. And someone's like, you should start a blog. I'm like, what the fuck is a blog? And then, fast forward and my first digital product made $1 million, which is funny. And I'll tell everybody why. And it's what I teach now. And it's hilarious because it was accidental, because all I did was post for free for 2 years. Every time somebody comment, I responded. And then when they asked me to make something, I made it. And then I gave it to them for free and they got mad at me and they told me I should put it on this website called ClickBank and charge $27 for it and email everybody. I had like 800 people. So I literally did exactly what they told me. And my first digital product made $1 million. And I was like, oh shit, it's kind of ironic, right? Field of Dreams is bullshit. If you build it, they don't come. You have to build it with them, right? Kevin Costner
Mhm.
lied to you. So I accidentally started the right way. And I believed if somebody gave me the time of day to stop their day and comment, they didn't owe me anything, but they stopped. And if somebody walks in my door of my brick and mortar business and says, good morning, I'm not going to ignore them. And so, entrepreneurship was born, but same survival mindset. Realized I was a food blogger. It was great. New York Times bestseller, #1 app, and was completely out of alignment. And my life was in ruins. My wife was 8 months pregnant. We were so close to bankruptcy. I was using my addiction of disconnection on the internet. So I drank some jungle juice and was like, oh, let's bring it into alignment. I gave the company away and disappeared, and then accidentally became a consultant because everyone's like, how did you do this? And I started applying it behind the scenes, which was the best place for my ego. And realizing that every time I taught people how to love their customers and actually help them get results, they would double their business or triple their business. So then everybody called. And that's where the rap sheet came from, scaling companies to 1 billion and blah, 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 that everybody talks about. And I was like, yeah, great. I hate fucking talking about it. I actually taught them how to love their customers and I hide all of it in marketing. Because in order to be an effective marketer, you actually have to be self-aware and you actually have to have empathy for what's happening on the other side. Because a human being needs to feel safe. And so nobody wants to talk about personal development on the front. Nobody wants to talk about mindset on the front. But here's the thing, success is an internal game. And, I'm even in the middle of it now where, going through an amazing marriage liberation and becoming closer to my ex than we've ever been and being best friends and realizing we want things different to like, oh, well, what do I want the business to look like? And am I willing to stand in whatever that looks like? Does that mean that I'm willing to let go of three $30,000 a month clients that I could use right now because it feels out of alignment? And the answer's always been yes. And so I feel like I just publicly publish every single chapter of my book when I'm in the middle of writing it and everybody gets to watch. But it's just like a Harry Potter series at this time of like different identities that I've just chosen to align with and live. But to bring context to what we talk about, it's so funny because everybody celebrates the victories on the field, but nobody talks about what happens off the field that allows that to happen.
Mhm.
And it was like 2 years ago that I realized like I can't not talk about this or share this anymore. And obviously I started coaching again. And that's how we met. And it's a very, very good byproduct. But then also I think it's a paradigm that exists for everybody right now. It's wrapped up in identity, it's in culture, it's in social, like you are your performance. And I think you lose when you think that in the get-go, right? Like money or your business or the where you finish in the race is a byproduct of everything that happened before then. It's not something that you do. I always joke with people like, oh, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to manifest. I'm like, great. What two things are you going to add together that equal $1 million? Because you can manifest all day, but it requires intention and input, right? Something plus something has to equal something. And so, now I talk about marketing, I talk about customer journey, but I also am willing to change my identity, to change my business, to change what it looks like to be in alignment. Because the one lesson I've learned through all of this and in the very public journey of George is that most of the things that people really empathize with me for, the pain, the damage, the stories, the big things were just byproducts of me being out of alignment. I was just lying to myself, right? Not allowing myself to feel, not saying I'm scared, not being willing to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like really genuinely, for our term, giving myself the permission slip to like I did this for the first time at 35 years old because I was challenged to say like, what do you want? Like, who do I want to be? Before I think about father, husband, entrepreneur, and the world, like when I look in the mirror, like who do I want to look at? And that was a question that, I never asked. And I found now that as long as I ask it, but I also honor the answer, everything gets easy. And when I pretend I don't like what I see, or I pretend to not see what I see, and I resist that, that's when things get really fucking hard. And that's
Mhm.
where entrepreneurship gets slippery because I'm celebrated, or most people are celebrated for hiding. The more you hustle, the more you're celebrated. And I was like, oh, yeah, but we study the greats, right? Is it they hustle and that's why they're a billionaire or centimillionaires because they master their time and do less with it, right? Like, and so it's this weird thing that's like baked in. And I think ultimately, the biggest lesson for me has been the only person who can hold me accountable to is the one in the mirror as well.
Yeah, man, so much to unpack already.
I
This
know,
is
but
this.
I feel like that's the shortest version I could give of like
I
what you
love it.
know.
Yeah, I love it. And I think there's a lot to take from that. And I think a lot of conversations I've been having recently is about this part of discovering like who you are, like who are you trying to be, who is it that you want to become. And
Hmm.
I think the lie that we're sold by society, and the one that I fell into for sure for years, was the only way to be a provider for my family is to just chase money, chase money. And that's what I fell into. And I've talked about this publicly a lot as well, is I was chasing it so much that I was running away from what was at
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
And it's only been in the last 3 to 4 years that I've done a ton of work on myself to figure out, no, like that's not what a man is. That's not who I need to be. I need to figure out what I want, how I need to get there, and how to bring my family with me in a complete alignment of values, of beliefs, of rules, of everything that we're doing together. And it's almost like this is it's a foreign concept, like
Hmm.
this is not being taught in a mainstream way. It's only when you get into like certain circles that people talk about this, or different masterminds. Sometimes you're like, oh wait, you think this too? Oh, I thought I was just crazy. And
Yeah.
it's baffling that this is not something that's
I
really
have some
talked about.
theories. I have some theories on this, and I also have a point on alignment versus agreement
Mm,
and the iterative process of what it means to become a man or a woman. And I think that I failed for so long because I didn't understand it. But like, here's my theory. When I was in complete breakdown, like my wife had left me, 7 years ago, and she's like, "You will not come back. You cannot come back unless you do personal development," right? Like it was basically a hard line in the sand. Like there's no chance we won't even speak again. But I'd known about the personal development for 3 years, 2 years leading up to it, right? And I followed them on social, but every single time they posted a piece of real content that spoke to me, I avoided it because I'm like, that's the truth.
mm,
Shit, shit, shit. And then it's on a platform that I can go distract or change feelings in or go back to hiding in. And really, the truth is that it kind of has baked in the number one thing that you have to understand, and you're taught in almost all of this, which is 100% responsible 100% of the time. Right. And so just the nature of the content itself, and this happens, like if I go post like a personal development concept of like a mindset thing piece, or like you might be thinking or feeling this, or this is a pattern, no comments, no likes, but the DMs are through the roof, right? Because it's also a public acknowledgement, right?
mhm,
And that has the built-in like, well, if I don't look a certain way from society, then I have to have shame, or like, how could I ever, right? And so it's all this like baked in bullshit. But even for me, it wasn't they Trojan horsed me in. They had to. Like there had to be a catalyst in my life to the point where the pain was enough that it bothered me, not that it bothered the people around me for them to complain, that it bothered me, like that it was enough for me to be like, wow, I need to be different. And in life, you find this one of two ways. You either find it through pursuit or you find it through pain. And the pursuit is really waking up and being like, God, my life feels good. I have no check engine lights on. Great. I'm going to go break something and see if I can find one. Or you wait until the pain of everything, it keeps popping up, it keeps showing up. And then eventually you're like, oh, my back's against the wall. Now I'll do personal development. Now I'll do that thing. Now I'll go read that book, right? It's one of the two ways. And I think it ties into the thing that I would say is that, even this concept of like being the man that I want to be, that just means in this moment. I don't give a fuck like who I want to be 7 days from now.
mm,
I have to earn the right to even talk about that man, and that's through today. And I think there's this concept of like this false finish line. And I have an author that I had on the podcast whose book I fucking love because it's like a 2 hour read that breaks every excuse ever. Because it's called The Little Book of Clarity, and it breaks down toxic thinking, right? Like I'll start on Monday, I'll do this when, I'll do this if. Those things never come.
yeah.
It's a now, right? And John Wineland, who is one of my men's teachers, David Dieta as well, they explained this concept to me of integrity that really helped me realize that like the only person I'm genuinely in integrity with right now is you. Because if you called my 7-year-old son and asked him where he want me to be and where he want him to be, it would not him be at school and me be in my office. It would be us in the basement building Legos or playing Roblox, or actually me throwing him on the bed and tickling him, because that's how I have to earn the right to put him to sleep every night. Right. But I'm only in integrity to what I'm tuning into in that moment. And so in that moment, it's a really simple thing of like, oh, am I currently being the person that I said I wanted to be? Am I currently acting in alignment with that? And I lost for so long because if the answer was no, I would go ask why. Why just got in the way of me doing the thing that would make it happen anyways, and gave me evidence to beat myself up and say, well, it doesn't look a certain way or it's not here. And that's where a lot of my models, came from, like the wedge and things like that. So it was really about just being honest. Like when you find a moment or you find a thing and you're like, God, I don't like this. Well, what would it look like? And what's one thing that would bring it back in? And you kind of earn the right. And I think the reason I say that is because alignment versus agreement are two very different things. And I think we lose when we think they're the same thing. Agreement means like everybody is 100% bought into the same idea, looking the same way, being the same way. Like most parents that agree to get married and raise their children are pretty much agreed on that child if they want it to be healthy and work when it comes out, right? Or they agree on like the container of their marriage, but they probably align on filling their buckets independently, right?
Mm,
Because how you fill yours and how she fills hers, right? So there's alignment, and alignment is like, hey, we agree on the outcome. We'd like it to be there. We'd like it to get there, but also there needs to be some wiggle room either way. And I think for me is that when I would make contracts with myself, I'd make them so rigid that I'd be like, well, it has to be this way. It was all about agreement rather than alignment. And it's like, hey, as things come up, adjustments are going to be made. We're going to learn things. We're going to feel things. We're going to realize I don't fucking like running for an hour and a half a day.
mm,
Great. I'm going to go swim for 20 minutes instead. Not I'm going to force myself to run for 90 minutes a day, right? Because you have to do things that are in alignment. And so I think it's an important concept because I lost for so long because I'm like, oh, it's out there, or I'll start then, or I'll do that there, rather than like, if I could just walk for 5 minutes a day every day, it's going to be way better than me running for 1 mile whenever I feel like it. And that consistency and that momentum, I think, is something that's lost.
yeah.
And human beings are movable, active creatures. It's literally like how we function. And like when we're getting overwhelmed or we're having fucking panic attacks, a lot of times people don't realize this, but the first thing you'll do is start fidgeting, or you'll go get up and move, or you'll go kind of release it and you feel better, right? And so I think just looking at our environments and looking at how we set them up and like how we support ourselves when we're in it, and like letting go of this perfection and letting go of this like it has to look a certain way, and being more committed to the progress or the learning of it than the perfection of it, I think is like the biggest thing that like I've been really focusing on. And it's the integration, right? I think too, and this happened during, COVID as well, but like the amount of consumption that increased blows my mind. But, I study jujitsu in the lens of how they teach it and the mechanics of it. And I love this, and I know you do as well. But I love when people are breaking down Gordon Ryan and they're like, what makes him successful? And the way that they explain it is the best, because success comes from not only knowledge, but knowledge translated into skill. And that's only when the knowledge is practiced until it becomes subconscious. And your
Mm,
success or your results get higher and higher the closer that skill line catches up to the knowledge that you have in your brain. And
mm,
I think that that's where we lose the game, because if you think about it, it's like once you have it, if you integrate it till you know it, it becomes a part of you. But if all you do is collect all these ingredients that every time something comes up, you have to go search through the pantry or go look in the bag or go, oh, what bag did I put that in? That knowledge is actually getting in the way. And so it's the integration and implementation, I think, that is missing so much,
mm,
that I didn't hold myself accountable to, right? Because my needle movers would change, my business would change, I would change. But like, we're athletes. We have to flex that mind, we have to flex that body, but we have to be willing to put in the work. So it's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I look at you, I look at Mike, I look at the people in our ecosystem, and everyone's like, oh my God, celebrate. And I was like, oh yeah, but I can tell you what they did every single day when you weren't looking. And I know they didn't feel like doing it every day, and they didn't hit their ceiling every day, but they made progress every day. And instead of being attached to it looking a certain way, they're like, all right, well, bite by bite, piece by piece, And we tend to do it in our businesses and we tend to do it with like our goals, but we don't do it to ourselves. And we have to do it to ourselves before we get on the field, right? Like I would never go onto the field unprepared. Like I don't want to wake up and see my son and have his first interaction with me in the day being him get upset because daddy didn't process his emotions before he woke up, right? Like I also understand that collateral damage is caused based on how I'm showing up in the world. And so I want to be solid in the morning, right? And so I think about my life now in the lens of like me off the field when nobody's looking, and then me on the field in whatever level of performance that is, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a CEO, as a owner, as a coach, as a whatever. But knowing that I kind of have to earn the right to be in those positions, because like if I don't know how I feel as a player, as if I'm sprained or have an injury or I have to adjust my workout, then only both of us can have pain or hurt come into it. And so I think it's just the neglected part. And like you see this, you listen to this, you study this, you listen to these greats, you listen to all the ones who had it and lost it all. Or what is their regret? What does they went back to? They all share one thing in common. And they're like, you will only have what you want when you don't really want it. Like you don't have the business you want, the life you want, because you haven't become the person to run it. And that's not a bad thing. We have to work on these things, not be attached to them, right? Like, it doesn't matter which way you slice it. You can convince yourself all day that like owning the cars and owning the houses is all the great thing, but it's really just robbing you of the one thing that we said we all wanted in the first place, which was time, right? And I think that that's the point that's lost is when you get so attached to the finish line, when you get so attached to the outcome, you end up losing the next race. And it's always just a byproduct. And so I think like you have to be willing to love the process. We love working out if we're really excited about the goal. We love crafting if we're really excited about blank. Like if you really love brownies, you probably love baking them and licking the batter, but we'd also love to snap our fingers and have them on demand. But there's a process involved with a payoff on the other side.
Mm.
And so I think we forget, and I forgot to earn my payoff every day.
Today's video is brought to you by Shortform. Shortform is an amazing tool for anyone who loves learning but struggles to find the time for extensive reading. It offers super concise summaries of thousands of non-fiction books, making it easier than ever to absorb key insights and ideas on the go. As a real estate coach, I know how precious your time is, and that's why I love Shortform. It helps me stay informed and inspired without spending hours reading. Whether you're looking to improve your mindset, boost productivity, or just explore new topics, Shortform has got you covered. As a viewer of my channel, you get a special offer from Shortform. Now, by joining through my link at shortform.com/Lewi Gault, you'll receive a free trial of unlimited access and an additional 20% discounted annual subscription. So check out Shortform and turn your learning into a super efficient process. Now, let's get back to the video. That's huge. And it's interesting because I know you have a morning routine, and I have the same thing. And it's interesting because it is for me getting in the right frame before my family wakes up. So I get up and I meditate and I journal, and then I'll read a little bit. And then when it comes to 7 a.m., when it's time to get the kids up, my wife up, then I'll make coffee for her so it's ready when she comes in. So it's like I have this like kind of routine that I do, but just that hour that I took for myself, just to be present with myself and get out any things that I'm thinking about, emotions, any anger, rage, guilt, shame, like, any kind of these feelings, and getting them out and processing through them before I show up for them.
Yep.
It's night and day the way that you operate. Because if I sleep in or I miss my alarm and I wake up at the same time, I can feel it immediately.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I had to write this down for a quote for myself, Louis, because this is what I was doing, but this became one of my own scripture statements. And I had to write on my journal every day, never let temporary feelings create undesirable permanent results. And that's when like I started to really, really get it. And the analogy that I use is like when you wake up in the morning, you are the most vulnerable to having your radio dial and station changed from any outside influence because you slept, you were in theta, beta, REM, post everything, brain food, like no noise, no distractions. And like what you choose to do when you wake up in the day permanently sets your radio dial in position. And I tell people this all the time. And if you wake up to Instagram notifications, text, this and happening, You're basically tuning it into 911 for the rest of the day.
Mm.
But if you wake up and you tune it into you, you're like, all right, this is who I am. This is who I feel. I took 10 minutes for myself this morning, 15 minutes for myself this morning. You basically set that dial in place as a barometer to know when you're on or off for the rest of the day. And if something comes in, you're like, oh, wait, nope, need to process this or feel this, or you get to go operate. Like you basically start a race without knowing how much gas is in your tank, knowing what your oil levels are at, knowing what your air pressure's at, blindly every single day if you choose not to. And then if you don't, other people come and start slashing your tires, and then you get upset when you can't finish the race. And there's no
So
way to slice it, right? Because you go study people's morning routines. I'm like, what do they all have in common? They're like, oh, they all have a morning routine. I was like, no, no, look deeper, fucker. What's the one correlation? And I was like, look. And I was like, yes, the amount of time that they spend alone. Not that they have a morning routine, the amount of time that they protect their energy, that they have clarity, they create space for themselves. And that's not something that you just start with 6 hours a day. It's something you start with 1 minute a day. And then it goes to five, and then it goes to 10. But then it becomes this container, for lack of better terms, and using a masculine feminine term, that your body consciously and subconsciously knows exists, which your environment then holds you accountable to operating towards and in alignment with your vision without you having to consciously think about it. And then if it breaks, you're like, wait, something's off. And you're like, wait, this isn't in line with my vision. Like that's how you know you get it. And then you get back on it. And it's like, oh, got a flat tire. Great. Let me restart the routine, not slash the other three and be like, oh, fuck it. It doesn't work. No, it's been working. Check engine light came on, like bring it back in. Like that's the most important part is that consistency.
yeah, you know what's funny? Just as you say that, one of the things I do every day is I write sticky notes for my kids and I put them on their water bottles for school. And I
Yep.
didn't do mine today.
Yep.
And I've been wondering what this feeling I've been walking around with all morning has been, and that's what it is. I forgot to
Uh,
deposit into them,
uh-huh.
and I'm like, and I would probably usually feel guilt over that, but you know, I've kind of learned to process through that. But it's one of those things where if I don't make my deposits in the Mackenzie and into my kids, I can feel it.
Uh-huh.
So I can feel that I
Uh-huh.
filled up in the morning, but I'm too full. I haven't given anything back out yet. It's this
Yep.
very odd give and take kind of
I know
energy
exactly what you're talking
that
about.
has to
I
come
know
through.
exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, because and then also like I've felt like that and it's like, oh, it's fine. Like I don't have to write the sticky today because I felt empty. And then the moment it was gone, I was like, oh, because that was the thing that would have filled me up. Like that was the thing. That was the note from the universe. That was the did you get the lesson? Or are you
Mm,
going to do this anyways? Right. But you nailed it, right? It's not about, and that's the thing about integrity. There's no such thing as perfection. Like we lose and we're like, I'll never say that again, or I'll always. Yes, you fucking will. And so will I.
yeah.
Right? Like the absolutes things are when we lose the game. But then it's so funny because I also know that you're going to go write fucking stickies and put them somewhere they're going to see as soon as they get home
Mm,
and then use it as a way to have a conversation that deepens the relationship with the kids, right? And
yeah.
you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Or they'll come home and be like, Dad, where was my sticky, bro?
Yeah.
Right? And then either way, it's really not about the perfection. It's about staying present in the moment
Mm,
and then bringing it back into integrity.
yeah.
And then
100%.
if we do that enough, more than we allow it to stay out, then we win the game. Like I tell everybody, I'm not trying to like hit 100 balls a day. If I swing 100 times, as long as I hit one, I'm still winning,
Mm,
but I still have to celebrate the one, not be upset that I missed 99 times, and I have to swing again tomorrow.
mm. Let me ask you this. I feel like a lot of people that I talk to, and a lot of people in my neighborhood, I see it. So I'm not from the US, obviously. So like
Yep.
I see a lot of college flags around here, right? And like in people's yards, like their college football and stuff. And I look at it sometimes and I'm like, I feel like a lot of people, just in general, people in my industry as well, a lot of men as well, live through their glory days and they believe that their best version of themselves is behind them. The version who was the quarterback on the football team at college,
Hmm.
or the version who was partying big, or that version, right? And then there's this like other version of themselves that just kind of lives now and operates in this kind of, just the daily life that we all should be living, kind of take the kids to school and do all this stuff. What I felt when I started really working on myself is one of the biggest fears I had was that my circle started to change. Relationships in my life started to change. And relationships in my life seemed to drop importance. And then some of them seemed to peak importance. And I had to make these really tough decisions, which is hard for someone like me, who's a serial people pleaser, to cut people out. And I feel like that's one of the biggest hurdles, I think, for people to make change is sometimes it's not even that it's within themselves, it's the external piece of it. Like, what will my life look like if I make a step to find out who I am? Did you, because you were in the military, for all intents and purposes, if I looked at you and said George was in the military, lives in Montana, likes to shoot guns, like I would be like, oh, he's a manly man, but then there's this piece that not a lot of people know who are inside you are this like real emotional teddy bear person. Was that difficult for you to make that transition, or like did you see that?
Until I understood the game, right? And so I have so what people will notice is like I'm the king of environmental reminding myself of the things that I need to remember. Like consider them the collection of fortune cookies that when things come up, I'm like, wait, I've been here before, get back in the game, right? Number one, is that I used to cut people out. There's a very big difference between cutting people out and establishing containers and boundaries. And Mike Tyson broke this down better than anybody around the cutting people out because he had this young rapper on his podcast and he was talking about how he made it out of the hood. And now he was great because he cut all these bad people out. And Mike Tyson looked at him and he said, no, you lost. The devil won because the devil changed you. And that landed for me like a fucking ton of bricks because I realized that there's a couple of things at play. Number one, something a shaman told me. Relationships happen for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, and the choice is not up to me. He said the relationship part, I added, and the choice is not up to me. My example is always required, but how close you get to me is dependent on what level in life you operate. But I don't get to turn my light off into dark areas because they're out of alignment. I get to put them in a bucket, or for my analogy, in the bay in a parking spot in my lighthouse where they can still see the light or they're driving by. They're even welcome into my cove, but there's containers and boundaries in my life that say, if you want a parking spot, here's what it looks like. Right. And like, for example, like you and Mike are one of very few people that have my personal phone number. I have two phone numbers on the same phone, right? But I have one that's like 50 people have it, right? You can text me anytime, all the time. But then I also have clients where we have a relationship and I'm like, hey, and after these hours and boom, I won't respond. I won't get back to you. They're just containers and boundaries, right? But I think what's important to understand, and I didn't understand this, is any level of self-development. Like I even hate the word personal development. It's choosing to be a good version of yourself. Like realizing that you aren't where you want to be somewhere, or you might want to be smarter here, or understand your brain better, or whatever the fuck that is. It's all you flexing the muscle of you, right? It's not this big swing of going to a conference, right? It's any level of that. But if at any point in your life you make a decision that you want to change something, you also have to remember that when you change that thing or that person, the person that everybody around you knew died. And you're growing and choosing to grow, and they are seeing the person that they know, love, and like die and become a different person. Well, in the human body, that creates reactance, and people start to latch on. And then what do? We're like, no, you need to do this. You need it. And they're like, oh my God, you're in a cult. No, we're just speaking two different languages, right? And what we have to remember is like when we're going through growth or change, our job isn't to tell them, it's to show them. And it's only in showing them that people's behaviors or things start to change or shift and come into progress. But I think a lot of people forget that when we grow, on the other side is everybody in our ecosystem has a relationship with that person of us, unless they're walking book by book, chapter by chapter, conference by conference, coach by coach. There's going to be gaps that are made. And I love Contagious and Jonah Berger's book, The Catalyst, but even in the lens of marketing, you're hurtling ahead. And now because you see it, you now have the responsibility of a leader to be the example and find their movable middle. Now it just happens that if they're 30 steps behind you, your example illuminates the way. And you're like, yeah, but to have dinner at my house, you have to be within 5 steps, for a lack of better analogy. And so it's about putting these boundaries and containers into place. But yeah, also like I'll speak to me personally, is I only knew how to live by my story or my accolades because I thought that they were my identity. And
Mm,
for me, is I was convinced I was afraid of failure.
mm,
I was not afraid of failure. I was afraid of success. It was really, really easy to tell my story about who I used to be and how this used to happen and what I used to do because it advocated me from having to write a new page every day in whatever book I decided to write, right? And nobody can force that change or catalyst on anybody. Nobody can make them want to change their career, change their jobs. They have to have that. But eventually, if you get bit by this or you look at this, there's a point where you're basically given a permission slip to write whatever story you want. And I was just more afraid of saying like I don't know or I don't know what it's supposed to look like or I'm still in the process than I was talking about that old fucking book that I'd been like spent 25 years of my life trying to eradicate the wounds of, but I'm reading it every single day claiming I want something different. Like at some point you got to realize that if you want to read a different book, you have to write it.
mm,
And you might start writing it and realize you just want to write a fucking haiku. So write a haiku, read it and love it. Or you write a short story, or you write a chapter, or you write one chapter and then live that way for 3 years before you decide to write another chapter. But genuinely, what I found is if that you're asking the question or you're looking at these things, then you're invited to this thing of like, I want to change something. Change it. If you like it, keep it. If you don't, don't. But know that when you change things, it doesn't also mean that everybody around you has to change. It means that you're choosing to grow and then you get to decide where you fit and how you fit. But for me, I believe that if people are taking the lens of the journey of any lens of personal development, it's to be a better version and allow their example to lead the people around them. And I think the worst thing to do is because we don't like how they eat or we can't establish boundaries to cut them out and then give them more evidence instead of us realizing that we are the change and like we
mm.
are technically the example. And anybody who has kids sees this, like you see it, right? Your kid works out with you too.
Yeah.
Branson sees me doing mobility, sees me stretching at night. Now my 7-year-old's like, Daddy, I can do clapping push-ups, right? My team, everyone on my team now has a Garmin and they do steps every day. Not because I
Mm,
told them to get one, not because I made them buy one, but they saw me doing them every day and non-negotiable. Now they're all walking like 15,000 steps a day.
mm,
But imagine if I'm like, oh my God, I can't be your friend. You don't have a Garmin. You're not doing steps with me every day. As hard as that is to land, if somebody doesn't speak a certain way that bothers you now because you learned something different, just remember that somebody was triggered by you too when you spoke that way and they were the catalyst for you to walk into the room.
mm.
So I think we have to remember in the hero's journey, it doesn't end when you slay the dragon. It ends when you return to the village and you teach them the lesson. And the moment they get it, a new dragon appears. So, like, that's how I see it.
Man, yeah, you know what, man, it's crazy. It's crazy how conversations come up in the right time, in the right moment, you know. Like I'm writing this new chapter right now. Like, I mean, like right now, I'm in this
Yep.
writing phase of a new chapter.
Yep.
And it's so easy for me to go back to the last chapter and just keep staying there, you know.
And I'll
And
give a tangible example, Louis. I think this might help everybody, but like I'm in the middle of this too in a different way, right? I just had my event and I had 3 or 4 friends that are like, hey, I'll be there, I'll be there, I'll be there. And let's make sure dates don't coincide with this other person's event. I'm like, yeah, totally, yeah, totally. And then they didn't make it to the event. And I had a moment of heartbreak and then I had a moment of processing it. And I chose to process it in front of my whole room because that's how I do it. I just rip myself open. I'm like, no, no, this happens to all of us. Let's talk about it. And then we figured out that the dates we had for the next event were Easter. So we had to move the dates. And the dates we had to move them to coincide with this other person's dates again. And then I was like, I responded to Ashley. I'm like, no, we're not moving them. That's fine. Pick those dates. And I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, bro, I love you to absolute pieces. I had to pick dates the same. I'd love for you to come, but it's completely fine. I'm here to support you. If you come in the future, my only ask is that you come for the whole time because it's really important to me. And that's how I feel people. And he's like, bro, fuck, thank you so much for saying this to me. Yeah, like that's even so much better. I'll plan for it. Right. But like that used to be a hard conversation for me. It's just a simple of like, hey, this doesn't feel right. Can we adjust this or can we do this? And that's writing a new page. But also on paper, that would be somebody who does $40 million a year, and they're like, I'm gonna fuck up the relation. No, that's why we have a relationship, right? Like it's built on those things. And so I also think that like a lot of people forget, Louis, when you're writing a new page, if you get to the end of the page and you don't like it, you can tear it out and just rewrite that page.
Yeah.
Right? Like he could have responded to me. I'm like, bro, I'm fucking so let down. And I was like, well, do you have any creative ideas? Because this is what I'm up against. And we would have written a different page together.
Mm.
Right. And like I would have checked if I wanted that page in my book or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. That's huge. I think
And like another one this morning, I had a message on Instagram. Hey man, remember that book that I included you in? You said you wanted an update. Do you have time for a 3 minute phone call this week just so I can update you? And he knows I'm big about time. And so Ash is like, can you go respond to his DM? And I was like, got it. And I was like, bro, I love you. It's so good to hear from you. I don't have the capacity to jump on like a 3 minute call. But if you send me an audio or video, I'd love to hear it and respond, as soon as I can. And like, this isn't personal. Like, I'm just respecting my time
yeah,
and my boundaries right now. And he's like, oh my God, bro, fuck yeah. Right. But like, I felt guilty. I'm like,
yeah,
who can't make a 3 minute call? And I had to be honest with myself. It wasn't that I couldn't, it's that I needed to choose not to because it didn't make me feel inspired or empowered. And it's a win win. Maybe this is a win win. And then, for him, it was. And so, I think that's where, and by the way, just to tie this in earlier, that's where in the morning when that radio dial is set, I'm aware of how I feel and what my capacity is that day. And I want to be the first one to say, if the coach calls me and I happen to be my own coach, he's like, hey, I need you to drive the ball, 100 yards down the field in 10 seconds. And I'm like, bro, my leg is broken today.
mm,
And as much as I would like to, I can coach the other three quarterbacks, but I'm not getting on that fucking field today.
mm,
Right. And knowing that is a big, big, big part of it. But I also think, Louis, I think everybody, like, I love watching, I watch creative people do it, but I always like wondered, I'm like, God, I could never fucking paint. Like, these guys are geniuses. How do they do this? And I like actually took the time to watch them paint. And I'm like, there's like 1,100 paintings under that final fucking product because they just cover it with another color if they don't
yeah,
like it. And they do it again. And then they do it again. And I'm like, oh my God, wait, this makes so much more sense now. And I was
yeah.
like, but why don't we do our life that way?
Mm, I think that's a beautiful point to finish a few things on. The last thing I was going to ask you, for people who are wanting to start something like this, like I know I have a morning routine, but I know yours is pretty dialed in and pretty easily explainable. I know you have a full episode about it, I think, on your podcast as well, which we
Yeah,
can link.
I do.
But
Yeah.
but what does
Yeah,
that
we
look
can
like?
we can link to the show. Yeah, and for me, like I'll explain it to everybody really quickly. Like pick the three areas of your life that are the most important, right? So there's four for me. My business is one of them. My mindset is another one. My physical body is one, and my state of being is one. So consider state of being like my personal development
Mm-hmm.
for my soul. My mindset is like sharpening my mind, habits, behaviors, thinking. My physical body is that, my physical body, and then my business is like my three big needle movers in my business every day, right? So my routine is simple. I have a couple items listed under each one, and then I have a floor and a ceiling for each one, which is what's the minimum I can commit to every day and what's my dream every day. And I ensure that I hit my minimums every single day, no matter what. But I have to earn the right to touch my business. And so I can't do any of my needle movers in my business until I've done at least one thing from the mindset, from the body, and from the state of being. And I'm not rigid in what it looks like, I'm rigid in the outcome.
Mm,
And so some days it's a 15-minute stillness practice, some days it's a 5 minute walk barefoot out in the cold, but there's always some semblance of space or being in my mind. My body is always sweating, but some days it's steps, some days it's push-ups, some days it's burpees, some days it's racquetball, depends on how I feel. My state of being is always some journaling or affirmations or things along those lines.
yeah,
But I protect the workout, not the actual sets and reps that are in it every day. And then I do that every single day. And so what I tell people is like, go pick up a Benjamin Hardy book, a Nicole LePera book, any Vivid Vision book, anything about the future. And like there's science to this future self-journaling. Like it's been studied, it's been hit and it's been taught in personal development for 40 years as far as I've found all the way back, but there's science to it. And so, you just decide in the buckets of your life, like what's important, right? Whether it's four B's or five F's or, my mind, my body, and my brain, like whatever that is for you, and just create a simple workout that identifies like where you are today and then where you'd like to be 30 days from now. And maybe that's going from a 5 minute bubble bath 3 times a week to taking a 20-minute bubble bath every single night to take care of yourself. I do that often, like three or four a week. But it doesn't have to be some massive exploit. It doesn't have to be I'm changing my entire life. It's like I'm going to bring back some happiness, or I'm going to improve this, or I'm going to bring this in. And then just give yourself the ability to win. Put it on paper, make it real, and make a commitment to it. And then protect the progress. Don't slash your other three tires, right? If you hit day 7 and you miss it, go again. You didn't fail. That was 7 days you didn't do it before.
Mm.
Go tomorrow and then keep going again. And then what you'll find is you'll find the things that basically fill your bucket in the morning and the things that drain your bucket in the morning. And then you move the things that drain your bucket further and further out of your morning and refill in the things that fill your bucket in the morning. And then you do the same thing in the middle of your day, at the end of your day. And you start realizing that you're just checking your barometer. And like that might be I go for a walk before lunch outside, or I go for 20 minutes in my car and I listen to my favorite music while I eat my lunch. Only you know. But I think you just start asking yourself what's important. Like what buckets would have the biggest impact for me? And then just make yourself a workout and realize that if you want to start running, you still have to start by running. So don't go try to run 30 miles. Just pick one and be like, I'm going to go run for 2 minutes. And I'm going to run every day for 2 minutes and get into the habit and allow it to adjust. I think that that's the best way that people can do it.
Yeah.
It's being really simple with it, not rigid with it, and not perfect with it. Like, I don't care if you hit 17 out of your 30. No, I care that if you identify that your mindset's important, your body's important, your state of being is important, and your business is important, then you hit at least one of them every single day. Because even on your worst of days, you still protected your progress. Like that's
Mm.
the most important thing for me.
Mm. Beautiful. I love it. Now, last thing I'll just ask you here. Um, since I've known you, you've been a person who pours into people, pours
Mm-hmm.
into Mike, myself, everyone that I know who you've talked to. Um, and a lot of people pay you a lot of money to do this for you
Yes.
with you.
Yes.
But I know you have something launching, so maybe do you want to kind of
I
give us a
do.
sneak peek of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and actually this is the first time I'll even publicly talk about it because it's been behind the scenes for a year in development, kind of like you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure, and I'll just tell everybody what it is, and it's invite only, so you just have to shoot me a message on Instagram and just say Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance. That's what it's called, and it's the Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance. And I used to run masterminds for 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs. I charged 5 to 10 grand a month, and they all got results and they loved it. And I was really, really averse to it for a long time, like 2 years. And I realized that I wasn't averse to it. I was averse to like how I was doing it and what I was charging. And so I realized that any entrepreneur who gets this understands that nobody can come build your business for you. Nobody can come put a brick in, nobody can record the video, and you don't want them to. But when things feel off or awry, you want a place to go or a reminder to say, hey, here's the playbook, get back in the game. And you want a place to work on the rest of this as an entrepreneur. And I said this earlier. I think everybody works on the business and they lose because when you work on the person, the business just grows in conjunction with the person and it just keeps going and going. And Lewi's in the middle of this. Mike is in this. I've watched and taken literally thousands of people through this, myself included. And everybody always asks me, "Hey, like what happens behind the scenes? Like what are your days like? Like what do you guys focus on? What do you and Lewi talk about? What do you and Mike talk about?" I'm like, "Do you want to know?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'll just fucking show you." And so we literally decided to create the Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance, and it's $100 a month and it is run just like my mastermind. There's a live Zoom call at least once a month with a topic breakdown Q&A. There's 2 drops a week in Telegram with like something actionable to focus on to hold you accountable in. And then everybody in the community supports. And then we have benefits at our events and things like that for networking. But I'll be honest with everybody. This isn't, I'm going to do this for you or I'm going to inspire you. This is, I'm doing this in front of you and you're more than welcome to come play the game with us and be around other entrepreneurs and other people committed to the same work for support, for encouragement, knowing that the faster you get triaged and back on the field, the faster you win. So it's a lot of mindset, relationships, and customer journey. Mindset being yours, relationships being yours to yourself, everybody, you, your team, people in your life. Customer journey is yours, your relationships, but also you and your business. So we'll sprinkle in business, we'll sprinkle in mindset. And it is a holy shit, I don't even want to have to think about this, but I'm excited to show up and get these wisdom nuggets dropped in, put them into practice and integrate them and then come back and pick up the next one. And so we're calling it the Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance. I'm really excited. We literally soft opened it today. And so it's the right person. Like you get it. You're like, I'm an entrepreneur. I could pay $1,000 a month, 5,000 a month for this, 10,000 for the month. I get it. I get that this is my team, and George is just as much learning and partaking as he is guiding and teaching, and that is the alliance. It's all of us.
I
And
love
those
it.
three things for me, you can't break it. If you focus on those things underneath everything, and even if you don't touch your business and you just institute the three mistakes in the customer journey and the 5 steps, with the other two, you'll literally like not even be able to understand what your life looks like, but you have to be willing to take the fork, fucking stab it, eat it, chew it, swallow it, and then come back and get the next bite. And that's what I really want to help people with, because it's the stuff that happens behind the scenes, and no one's going to go sexually talk about like, oh yeah, I want to work on my personal development every day and realize that I'm showing up like a butthead and that my business is not holding me accountable either. I'm like, great, I won't say it. Let's just fix it and let's just make it easy for everybody. And so for me, it's kind of like my accountability clique. It's my team. It's my, like, I'll call it a cult for lack of better terms, my superhero alliance of like people that care about people, people that want to make money, but they want to put their head on a pillow and feel in alignment and proud of what they're doing and not feel like they have to work 25 hours a day or sacrifice themselves or live out of alignment, right? And so if you feel the call, hit me a DM. My Instagram's it's George Bryant. Lewi will link it below, and just shoot me a message. It says Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance, and we'll send you right over.
Yeah. I would say, guys, if you're watching this and you've got something from this video, this is what you would get on a monthly basis. Like, George is a one-of-a-kind person who has inspired myself, has inspired Mike, has really become someone that, you know, I have in my SOS. If you haven't looked at that, look at George's podcast on the SOS model. But a person who truly cares about relationships and how you grow your business and how you grow yourself. And with this low barrier entry into joining this kind of team, this kind of group accountability, like, it's an absolute no-brainer. So if you got anything at all from this and think it's worth $100, you should follow George, DM him, and get involved. But George, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. I know
Oh,
how
buddy,
slammed
honor,
you are.
man. I'll do this anytime with you. Anytime.
Yeah. Well, I
Anytime.
appreciate
And
you, brother.
for everybody listening, like, I mean this, like, the only way that I would be upset is if you listen to this and did nothing. I won't be offended if you don't like me, but like, even if you do nothing after this, like, if anything landed, just take that one thing and put it into practice and just give it a chance. Try it, use it, like, give it 30 days, give it 45 days, like, give it a chance in the oven to turn out. And I promise you, the worst that happens is you're like, oh, I'm a little more clear, or it's a little bit better and I don't want to do it every day, but you can't lose if you try any of it.
Love it. George, I love you, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, bud. Thank you.
Boom. There we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that interview with George Bryant. Incredible conversation. I really, really loved chatting with him. Now, if you want to find out more information about George, you can hit the links below. There is a link to everything that he does down there. If you want to be part of Atlas Alliance next virtual event, then you can also click the link below to check that out too. We would love to have you as part of that. And if you want to find out different ways how you can work with myself, then you can also find links for that too. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. Plenty more of these to come on the channel, so stay tuned and we'll see you on the next one.